If you know me, you know that I'm a big fan of Saints Row. I started playing the series way back in 2011 with the third entry aptly named Saints Row the Third. That game marked a turning point for the series, away from trying to be a GTA clone and instead becoming something more absurd. And I mean that in an absolutely delightful way. We're talking superpowers, space travel, aliens, and even planetary destruction. It was pretty crazy, but it presented a problem. Once you've raised the stakes that high, where do you go from there? Enter Saints Row. No, not Saints Row 5, just Saints Row. This isn't a remake, it's a reboot. And from the looks of it, Volition is taking a big risk. Almost nothing of the Saints fans like me remember is present. There are no recurring characters, few if any recurring weapons, and the setting is completely different. Instead of Steelport, which was modeled after New York, Saints Row takes place in the fictional Southwest American city of Santo Ileso. It feels like a hodgepodge of things folks like me from Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico see in their day-to-day lives. How do I know? I recently got to check out the game for 4 hours ahead of its release next month. It's against that new Southwestern backdrop that you meet Saints Row's new cast of characters. Before I started up, I had to create my boss using the same tools that were in last month's demo. I'm still impressed with the character creator, but I didn't want to spend too much time on it at the expense of playing the game itself. So I made a quick, somewhat generic looking character and moved on with things. Once I made my boss, I was introduced to Kevin, a DJ who seemingly knows everyone in Santo Ileso, Nina, an incredibly skilled mechanic and getaway driver, and Eli, the brains of the operation. Each character has their own unique personality and backstory, but what interested me the most was how the opening moments of the game serve as a backstory of the Saints, and just how long it took for me to find that out. At the outset of my demo, rather than taking the role of the head of a criminal organization, I was a soldier in a private military corporation, a setting that would feel more at home in Metal Gear than in an open-world crime game. If you've played a previous Saints Row game, you know that the boss of the Saints is an exceptionally skilled fighter. The original series never explained why you were so skilled, which, despite the wacky setting, was something that bothered me. I like the boss having a backstory that explains some of the insane antics you'll get up to later in the game. Well, okay, maybe later wasn't the best choice of words. The combat tutorial in the new Saints Row is one of the craziest I've ever played. You're dropped in the middle of a massive firefight while being fed instructions on how to do everything from switching weapons to aiming to crouching. If you've played a previous game in the series, combat isn't going to feel too dissimilar to what you've done in the past. Weapons feel a lot like they have in previous entries, though there are some new additions to the flow of combat that make things a bit more interesting. You can now lock on to explosive items in the environment and fire a single shot into them to detonate them, strategically taking out enemies or destroying parts of the environment in your path. There are also several new abilities you can use at the cost of a rechargeable meter in battle. My favorite of these is called the Pineapple Grenade. With it, you stuff a grenade down your opponent's pants and throw them into a crowd, killing them and anyone around them instantly. To heal, I had to execute enemies with style. A small circular meter in the bottom center of the screen would indicate when I could perform one of these Doom-like glory kills to replenish my health. It's clear that Saints Row wants you to be in the thick of the action, but you're going to need to keep your wits about you if you want to survive. The tutorial was surprisingly difficult, with loads of enemies to take out, and I have to say I missed the sense of ease having superpowers granted me in Saints Row 4, but the challenge was worthwhile, because it culminated in a truly insane fight atop a jet that reassured me that this new take on the franchise kept at least some of the craziness that always kept me coming back for more. Once I was out of the tutorial, it was time to learn about Santo Ileso's gangs. Fortunately, 2 of the 3 characters I mentioned earlier, Kevin and Nina, are aligned with the 2 major players in town. First up, we have the Idols, a Watch Dogs-inspired group bent on reshaping society. They dress in a pretty distinctive way, donning colorful suits and sporting LED helmets that show graphics and facial expressions. The second group is known as Los Panteros. They're more of the established players in Santo Ileso, controlling a majority of the city and giving the PMC group our main character works for a run for their money. With full control of my character to explore Santo Ileso, I decided to do, well, exactly not that, and instead focus on playing the story missions. In the beginning of the game, I noticed there were some side activities I could take part in, like flying around in a wingsuit or locating pallets of cocaine, but I wanted instead to see how this group of roommates would eventually form the new Saints. What I didn't expect is that it would take nearly the entirety of my 4-hour demo to get that far. Missions in Saints Row are pretty long, with some taking me over a half hour to complete. The beginning missions followed open-world crime game tropes: drive somewhere, get into a gunfight, repeat, though there were some standouts within the group. One mission saw me chasing a Los Panteros convoy through a dust storm in order to retrieve a stolen artifact. During it, I was jumping between trucks and cars, firing on enemies from atop moving vehicles, and manning the occasional turret. Each of these set-piece missions culminated in some kind of over-the-top battle with an enemy, whether it's fighting on a jet or taking tons of cars out with an RPG. The pacing is excellent, and at no time during my 4 hours did I feel like the game started to drag. Even the slower missions, like one in which I had to spook a real estate investor by driving erratically, are fun to play. They offer a lighthearted break between the sometimes demanding fights that lie ahead. Once I got into the rhythm of playing missions, I forgot all about the fact that this wasn't the Saints Row that I know. Seeing familiar animations like diving into a car feet first or hopping to get extra distance on a grenade throw reminded me that this is the same team doing what they do best, making an insane, off-the-rails, open-world game that's sure to house tons of crazy surprises. This new Saints Row is an amalgamation of some of the ideas that made the older series great, with a bunch of new ones. So far I like what I've played, and I'm optimistic that I'll love this new entry as much as the predecessors, once I'm able to get my hands on the finished product next month. Thanks for watching the whole video, I really appreciate it. That really helps us out. If you'd like to help us out further, you can head over to patreon.com/gvgaming to find out how you can support us and become part of the best community anywhere on the internet. We've got a ton of options for you to check out, and if it's not your thing, maybe drop us a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and we'll see you next time.